Let's talk about Fear, that most unsung of 1990s thrillers. A movie with a killer soundtrack.
So I wanna come back down from this cloud. Oh, but something's always wrong.
A movie with one of the most idiosyncratic villains of the decade. A movie that features an unforgettable climax at an amusement park. Yeah, we're not talking about that one. We're talking about the Ali Sheedy one. This video contains spoilers, so consider watching the film first before you continue. And if you like what you see, click the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure to click the little bell to be notified for new videos. I'm not sure if the 1990 film Fear is an unacknowledged masterpiece of the thriller genre, or if it's just a film made specifically for me and the 3 other people who spent way too much time in the new releases aisle of Blockbuster in 1993. What I do know is that it is the unluckiest thriller of all time. It is a movie that got caught in the gears of a corporate collapse, orphaned by its studio, and then eventually erased from the internet by an SEO nightmare involving Marky Mark.
What? No!
So let's talk about the missing link between the slasher and the psychological thriller. Let's talk about the year 1990.
What does the fuck say?
Oh, not far enough.
Feel it, Casey. It's the fear. There's no other rush like it in the world.
Casey, break away.
I can't.
Fear, a psychological suspense thriller.
To understand why this movie looks the way that it does, and why you've probably never seen it, we have to talk about Vestron Pictures. Vestron Video was basically the guy who wins the lottery and then immediately goes out and buys a tiger. They made a fortune in the early 1980s by realizing studios and rental stores could make a fortune if they just cooperated. They were swimming in cash. Things were so good that they decided to expand from distribution into production, which led to them purchasing the rights to Eleanor Bergstrom's semi-autobiographical account of her time in the Catskills, Dirty Dancing. It was a film that cost next to nothing to produce, but generated massive global returns. The success of Dirty Dancing proved to be a double-edged sword. It encouraged Vestron to ramp up production spending just as the market dynamics were shifting. The studio began greenlighting a slate of diverse mid-budget genre films, including horror titles like Waxworks, Lair of the White Worm, Earth Girls Are Easy, and Fear. The strategy was to create a portfolio of 10 to 12 films annually, with budgets typically capped under $6 million. And if they found another Dirty Dancing, fantastic. But mostly they were just hoping to live off singles and doubles that would perform well on video, even if they underperformed theatrically.
Sheer terror of Ghoulies 2 and Vestron's Halloween promo, The Butcher's Dozen. 13 horrifying titles featuring ghosts, ghouls, beastie.
By the time Fear entered production in 1989, Vestron's financial foundation was eroding. The company had overextended itself, and a string of box office disappointments, including The Lair of the White Worm and Dream a Little Dream, drained its capital. The independent studio model was collapsing under the weight of rising market costs and the consolidation of theater chains, which favored major studio blockbusters like Batman and Die Hard over mid-tier independent fare. Fear was caught in this downward spiral. The film was conceived with theatrical distribution in mind. The casting of Ali Sheedy, a recognizable, if not bankable star, and the involvement of composer Henry Mancini's caliber signaled that this was a priority project, not intended as filler content. However, as Vestron filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1990, its distribution arm was paralyzed. The assets of the company, including its library of unreleased films, became bargaining chips in liquidation proceedings. Fear, along with other titles like the Gary Busey biopic Hider in the House, was denied a theatrical release in the United States. Instead of a red carpet premiere, Fear was sold to the premium cable network Showtime, where it debuted in July of 1990. It positions the film as a TV movie in the public consciousness, a label that often carries a stigma of lower quality and reduced ambition.
Paula Abdul.
I was raped.
Adrian Pazdar.
All I want is for us to be happy.
In a story with a twist so shocking,
Jerry, a rapist?
you may not believe it. Believe it. Inspired by actual events. Touched by Evil, ABC Sunday.
Plus, in 1990, Showtime wasn't exactly the prestige network it eventually would become with shows like Dexter and The L Word. No, this was very much Temu HBO at this point.
Plus, 2 instant winners will get a 1991 Mercury Capri, the perfect vehicle for hot summer fun.
The release pattern had a devastating effect on the film's critical reception and legacy. Without a theatrical run, there were no press junkets, no Siskel and Ebert reviews, and no box office data to validate its existence. It simply appeared on the video store shelves, competing for attention against the erotic thrillers and direct-to-video sequels that saturated the market in the early 1990s. The film's R rating and dark subject matter meant it sat alongside exploitation films, obscuring the sophisticated craft involved in its creation. Which brings us to the text itself. The film is directed by Rockne O'Bannon, a creator best known for sci-fi cult classics like Farscape and Sequest DSV. And you can feel that sci-fi DNA here. He treats the supernatural elements not as magic, but as mechanics. We follow Casey Bridges, played by Ali Sheedy. Your mileage may vary on Sheedy's performance, as she situates herself somewhere between her basket case persona in The Breakfast Club and a sort of proto-Clarice Starling. She has the kind of tics I imagine one would have if they could see through the eyes of a killer. When we meet her, she's helping police catch a child killer by describing what she sees from the killer's point of view. This is more than just Will Graham empathizing with serial killers. This is sitting in the experiential passenger seat while the killer is driving. What I appreciate is that we've skipped over the perfunctory, "I don't believe in this psychic mumbo-jumbo" exchange. The cops believe her, she's part of the team. They're just frustrated over her power's lack of clarity. Although it comes down to the wire, Casey's tips lead police to the killer before he gets another victim. And we fast forward a few years to Casey on the talk show circuit. She's written books about her psychic ability to link with murderers. She has essentially found a way to commodify her own trauma. In a modern context, she's the gig economy mystic. She's an Uber driver, but for catching serial killers. There is a cynicism here that feels very ahead of its time. Her manager, played by the legendary Lauren Hutton, is driven, pushy, and opportunistic, but also empathetic to Casey. I think a lesser film would have made her a stone-cold bitch of a cartoon character. But while she's empathetic, she still wants that book deal. The film frames the gift of second sight as labor, exhausting, painful, underappreciated labor.
We need to know his destination. We've got to know where he's taking her.
It's not like that.
Sheedy plays the psychic visions as valuable, but not as a superpower. More like a chronic illness. It hurts her. It's an overwhelming sensory assault. And this brings us to the film's central conceit.
Leading the top stories at this hour is murder in the community of Mar Vista,
which O'Bannon executes brilliantly. The link.
Who is this? What?
In most psychic detective movies, like The Dead Zone or The Eyes of Laura Mars, the psychic sees the killer. It's a one-way mirror. But in Fear, the line goes both ways. When she sees him, he sees her. One of the most subtly horrifying scenes in film history, one that still has the power to make cynical, media-saturated audiences gasp, comes in Rear Window. When the killer, played by Raymond Burr, notices Grace Kelly clandestinely signaling through the window to Jimmy Stewart across the courtyard, and his gaze follows her signal up, and looks right at us. Fear's central premise is that scene writ supernatural.
It's okay to be scared, Casey. You should be.
The two-way connection turns the film into a game of surveillance. But much to Casey's horror, and the horror of the audience, this time it's asymmetrical in the other direction. She gets to sit in the passenger seat of his mind, but because he knows this, and knows she can't control the visions, she's less a passenger than a captive. He remains constantly in shadows and silhouettes and diffused, lusterless reflections. Her visions are never distinct enough to identify him. Just what he's doing. And in the film's most sadistic twist, Casey's loss of control and fear amplify the killer's pleasure. The more he makes her watch, the more he gets off on it. Casey offers her services to the Los Angeles Police Department and detectives Weber and Wu, played by the great character actors Stan Shaw and Keon Young. The casting here is another indication that Vestron was not f***ing around. They didn't just want this to be slop. They wanted a quality film. Shaw in particular gets to stand out as Casey's help backfires, letting the killer know who is on the case and where he lives. In the B-plot, Casey meets a cute neighbor, Jack, played by Roseanne Smiles O'Keefe. Yes, I think of Roseanne when I see him, not Caddyshack. Deal with it. And I know what you're thinking. Wow, she meets a cute guy right around the same time she starts tracking the most difficult and dangerous serial killer of her career? But get that thought right out of your head. The film never even teases us with that possibility. It knows better than to dangle that tired cliche that was tired before it even became a cliche. In fact, there are no red herrings. The shadow killer, as he's dubbed by the police, or Mr. Fear as Casey occasionally calls him, is just some guy. The film isn't compelled to gaslight us into feeling like the killer is someone close to Casey, a boyfriend, a cop, or publicist. There's no need to put a hat on a hat here. He's dangerous enough as it is. And nowhere is that more evident than the airport sequence. Of course, if you found your presence was exacerbating a killer's thrill and making him target more women, the responsible thing to do would be to get the hell out of Dodge, right? Take away his thrill by leaving town. But of course, when you're insulated or too powerful to be gotten to, truly evil people will attack the most vulnerable people around you. And that's exactly what the Shadow Man does when Casey tries to get on a plane. He targets her best friend and publicist, Jessica. And he does it in the most sadistic way. Earlier in the film, Jessica and Casey are doing the walk and talk, and Jessica avoids getting on a crowded elevator full of people. And because the Shadow Man is hitching a ride in Casey's mind, he knows that Jessica has an intense fear of suffocating. So that's just how he kills her, as Casey pleads in the middle of an airport terminal.
But that's her greatest fear. I know it is, Casey. I read it in your thoughts.
He wants to possess Casey in both senses of the word. This all leads to a near-perfect third act. And if you can't already tell, I'm going to heap a ton of praise on this film because it hits my specific taste sweet spot. At every turn, where the movie could make a good decision or a bad decision, Rockne O'Bannon makes the good decision. And he does it every time out. No red herrings, great. Fully fleshed out characters who act like humans, check. The protagonist tries to do a smart thing only to have it go horribly bad, right on. So what we're left with is we know we're going to have a showdown between Casey and the Shadow Man. But we've written ourselves into a hole here because the Shadow Man doesn't want to kill Casey. He's not goading her into a showdown. He's a parasite leeching off her fear. This would be like killing your drug dealer. We also need to resolve the B-plot with Casey's nascent boyfriend. He needs a role to play. We could have the Shadow Man target him and Casey has to come to the rescue, but that's too girl-bossy for 1990. Remember, Casey's not a superhero. She's not Helen Slater, and this is not Supergirl. We could have Casey get kidnapped and he has to rescue her, which is how they would have handled it back in the 1970s. But we're post-second wave here. That's not happening. Plus, it would suck. Nope, instead O'Bannon decides to make a good movie. Jack the boyfriend does contribute. He gives her some tips on how to compartmentalize her emotions because he's a fireman, and he has to do that too. He's a supporting player. He finds a way to support.
I never told you emotions were hot. You read my books.
One of them.
Which one?
3 of them.
There's only 3.
Come on, that's cute. They're cute together.
So you do watch the show?
I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year.
Casey finds that if she channels her emotions and concentrates, she can block out the Shadow Man and still spy on him. And that enables her to track into a laundromat. Yes, he's a serial killer, but he's also a man who does his best to avoid static cling. Unfortunately, Jack jumps a curb, which provides a momentary distraction, and the killer is able to sense Casey spying on him. He makes a quick escape, and now he's pissed.
I wouldn't have hurt you for anything, but now I'm gonna hurt you worst of all.
Casey blocks him out again, but in one of the creepier moments of the film, we see a pair of headlights inch closer and closer behind Jack's truck. And we know they're being hunted. Casey and Jack dart into a carnival, hoping to get lost in a sea of people, but the killer's able to track them wherever they go. Casey escapes into a hall of mirrors, which kinda works because it's so disorienting, but he follows her in and... holy shit, that's Pruitt Taylor Vince. Yeah, 5 stars, no notes. You probably know Vince from his run on Stranger Things or his turn as Pa Kent in the most recent Superman movie. This guy plays serial killers a lot.
Unruly.
In fact, I covered him earlier this year in the John Cusack Ray Liotta movie Identity. But can we just take a moment to appreciate the reveal and how good PTV is? He'd already had a steady career up to this point, but I doubt anyone in 1990 would have been like, "Oh, it's him! It's that guy from that thing!" They probably would have been taken aback by his nystagmus, the thing that makes his eyes dart back and forth. But check out the way his lips do this kind of half-smile thing, like he's fighting back joy and finally being face-to-face with her. Of course, this whole climax is a tribute to Orson Welles' 1947 classic The Lady from Shanghai, which also takes place in a hall of mirrors. And there's even a nod to the Hitchcock film Strangers on a Train, with the circus version of "And the Band Played On" droning on in the distance. There is one small ingredient left, though, and that's that after an hour of putting Casey through the ringer, you gotta give her Sidney Prescott mic drop moment.
You knew we were following you tonight. Not because you could read my thoughts, but because you could read Jack's. Well, Jack ain't here anymore.
That is a moment that belongs to a movie theater crowd. But of course, that never happened. Casey beats him with a flashlight and jumps to the Ferris wheel to keep him from getting away, and in the struggle he plunges to his death, falling from the God's eye view he's been abusing the entire film. Happily ever after. And yeah, I was pretty happy with it. So we have a unique villain, a subversion of the final girl trope, an interesting, if not wholly original premise, and a bizarre experimental score from a legend. Why is this movie not a cult classic? Well, I talked about the Vestron bankruptcy debacle, but we also have the Marky Mark problem. If you do a title search on IMDb, the top result is going to be the 1996 erotic thriller with Mark Wahlberg and Reese Witherspoon. That film has effectively gentrified the search results. It has colonized the digital space. The 1990 Fear is a victim of what I like to call algorithmic erasure. It's not just that the movie is forgotten, it's that the internet literally doesn't know how to find it. The internet is littered with hundreds of films that have been rediscovered because of IMDb or other ways down the rabbit hole. But any mention of Fear is going to evoke a chest-pounding Bostonian, not an obscure straight-to-cable thriller. In fact, when I searched for this film as part of my research, it took me 7 clicks through the title results just to get to this film's link. It was faster to search Ali Sheedy and just go from there. Also, did you know that there's a Lifetime Christmas horror called Do You Fear What I Fear? That's a damn good title. Fear is not, as you can tell. Rockne O'Bannon may have been able to create a quality sci-fi series and direct the hell out of a film, but he really dropped the ball by not thinking about the SEO back in 1990. Anyway, the moral of the story is, when you pick a generic title, you risk a white boy rapper f***ing over your movie later on without the goddamn common courtesy to get it ready first on the roller coaster. And that's a tragedy, because the 1990 film is about being afraid of the vulnerability of your own mind. It explores the terror of empathy, the idea that feeling what others feel isn't a gift, it's a curse. It's a bridge between the body horror of the 1980s and the cerebral identity horror of the 1990s. It stands in the doorway, waiting for someone to notice it. So do yourself a favor. Go find the Ali Sheedy version. Just maybe don't watch it alone. Stay warm, stay safe, wash your hands, return your shopping carts, make good choices, and I'll see you next time.